He was a decorated police officer, a man sworn to protect and serve. But when he came home early one day and discovered a betrayal that shattered his world, he made a choice that would transform him from protector to destroyer. What happened in that quiet kitchen on a March morning would shock an entire community and raise haunting questions about honor, betrayal, and the razor-thin line between civilization and violence. This is the story of Marcus Williams, a man who lost everything in a single moment, and the devastating consequences of what he did next. No one in the small town of Greenville, South Carolina could have imagined that behind the walls of the Williams family home, one of the most shocking tragedies in recent memory would unfold. What began as a normal working day in March 2023 would end in a scene of horror that would shake the entire community. Marcus Williams, 42, was known to everyone as a man of respect. A former police officer with 15 years of exemplary service, he had retired early due to a back injury sustained during a high-risk operation. His colleagues described him as meticulous, disciplined, and extremely dedicated to his work. Marcus was the kind of cop you wanted by your side in difficult situations, recalled Devon Mitchell, his former partner. He never lost his cool, always thought before he acted. Marcus's wife, Nicole Williams, 38, was a music teacher at the local elementary school. With her warm smile and infectious energy, Nicole was loved by the children and respected by the parents. She organized the church choir every Sunday and was actively involved in community activities. Nicole had contagious energy, said school principal Patricia Robinson. The children loved her lessons because she made everything fun and special. The couple met 16 years ago during a music festival in Charleston. Marcus was off duty, enjoying the day with friends, when he heard Nicole's voice singing on a small stage. He used to say it was love at first sight. 3 years later, in an intimate ceremony surrounded only by close family and friends, they were married at the historic Bethel AME Church in Greenville. During the first years of their marriage, the couple seemed truly happy. They lived in a cozy house on Oakwood Drive, a quiet, tree-lined street where children played freely on summer afternoons. The house had a well-kept garden that Nicole loved to decorate with seasonal flowers. Marcus built a small wooden deck in the back with his own hands, where the couple used to have breakfast on Sundays. But not everything was as perfect as it seemed. Those who knew the couple more intimately began to notice subtle changes over the past 2 years. Marcus had become progressively more withdrawn after his forced retirement. The transition from a career that defined his identity to a domestic routine had been more difficult than he publicly admitted. He tried to hide it, but you could see that Marcus was lost without his badge, noted Jerome Carter, a neighbor and longtime friend. A man who spent 15 years solving problems and protecting people suddenly found himself without a purpose. That weighs on the soul. Marcus began spending hours in the basement, which he had converted into a small workshop. There, surrounded by tools and unfinished woodworking projects, he sought some kind of meaning. Nicole encouraged his hobbies, but friends noticed that she seemed increasingly distant, as if she were carrying an invisible weight. Nicole's sister, Simone Davis, 35, was a constant presence in the couple's life. Divorced for 3 years and childless, Simone had moved to Greenville to be closer to her sister after her difficult separation from her husband. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, which allowed for flexible hours and frequent visits to the Williams home. Simone and Nicole have always been very close, said their mother, Dorothy Davis. Since they were little, they were inseparable. When Simone's marriage ended, it was natural that she wanted to be close to her sister. Nicole was her safe haven. Simone was the opposite of Nicole in many ways. While Nicole was reserved and traditional, Simone was outgoing and modern. She had natural hair styled in locks, wore colorful clothes, and was always trying out new hobbies. In recent months, she had become practically part of the furniture at the Williams house, showing up several times a week, sometimes staying late into the night. Marcus initially seemed to enjoy Simone's company. She brought a different energy to the house, lively conversations about art, culture, and world events that he no longer had through his police work. But some neighbors began to comment on the frequency of the visits. It was strange, admitted the next-door neighbor, Angela Martinez, discreetly. Simone was there almost every day. Sometimes I would see her car still parked in front of the house late at night. What no one on the quiet street in Greenville could have imagined was that behind the flowery curtains and well-tended garden, the dynamics of that family were about to implode in a way no one could have predicted. On March 15, 2023, Marcus woke up at 6:00 in the morning as usual. Nicole was already in the kitchen making coffee, a morning ritual they had maintained for years. They exchanged few words, a routine that had become normal in recent months. "I'll be back early today," Marcus said as he grabbed his keys. "My physical therapy appointment has been rescheduled for 2:00 in the afternoon." Nicole just nodded, focused on her cup of coffee. Marcus noticed that she seemed nervous but attributed it to work stress. The school was preparing a big end-of-term recital, and Nicole was in charge of all the musical coordination. What Marcus didn't know was that this day would change everything. The morning of March 15th began like any other for Marcus Williams. After leaving home at 6:30 a.m., he headed to his physical therapy session at the Rehabilitation Center, located 20 minutes from Greenville. The route was familiar, one he had traveled 3 times a week for the past 18 months. Marcus's physical therapist, Keisha Thompson, noticed something different about him that morning. He was quieter than usual, she would later recall. Normally Marcus would talk about sports, politics, anything. But that day he barely spoke, only responding in monosyllables. The session ended at 8:15 a.m. Marcus had the rest of the day off until his next appointment at 2 p.m. He decided to stop by his favorite coffee shop for a coffee and a pastry. It was a comforting routine, a little ritual that gave some structure to his empty days since retirement. Then Marcus made what would later be described as the decision that changed everything. He decided to go home early. His next appointment had been cancelled. Instead of finding something to do or letting Nicole know he would be back early, Marcus simply got in his car and drove home. It was exactly 10:12 a.m. when Marcus parked his grey Honda Accord in the driveway. He immediately noticed Simone's car, a red Toyota Camry, parked in front of the house. This was not unusual. Simone visited Nicole often. But something about the scene made Marcus pause. The curtains in the living room were closed in the middle of the morning on a weekday. Nicole always kept the house brightly lit. And there was music playing. He could hear it even from outside. Loud music, which was also unusual. Marcus felt a knot in his stomach. His police training had taught him to trust his instincts. And at that moment, something was wrong. He took the keys out of his pocket but hesitated. Part of him wanted to ring the doorbell, announce his presence. But another part, the analytical, investigative part, wanted to understand what was going on before revealing his arrival. He opened the front door quietly. The house was strangely warm, the heating on full blast despite the moderate temperature outside. The music was coming from upstairs, from the couple's bedroom. Marcus climbed the stairs slowly, each step carefully chosen to avoid the creaks he knew by heart. His heart was racing, adrenaline beginning to rush through his veins. The bedroom door was ajar. Marcus stopped in the hallway just 2 meters away. That's when he heard it. Voices, low laughter, sounds that made his blood run cold. With one swift movement, Marcus pushed the door wide open. The scene that unfolded before him was like a punch in the stomach. In the bed he and Nicole had shared for 13 years, his wife was with her sister, Simone. There was no mistaking what was happening. "Marcus!" Nicole screamed, pulling the sheet up in a panic. Time seemed to stand still. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, his brain struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. 15 years as a police officer had prepared him to confront criminals, life-threatening situations, brutal crime scenes. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for this. Simone was the first to recover from the shock. "Marcus, I can explain." "Explain?" His voice came out as a low, dangerous growl. "Explain what exactly?" Nicole began to cry, still clutching the sheet against her body. "Please, let me talk." "How long?" Marcus asked, his voice now eerily calm, the calm before the storm that any police officer would recognize as the most dangerous moment. "How long has this been going on? In my house? In my bed?" The silence that followed was more eloquent than any answer. Nicole couldn't look at him, tears streaming down her face. Simone had turned completely pale, apparently realizing for the first time the gravity of the situation. "Months," Nicole finally whispered. "It started 6 months ago." 6 months. Half a year. Marcus did the math in his head, going over every visit from Simone, every time Nicole had seemed distant, every night she had said she was too tired. 6 months, he repeated, as if testing the words. 6 months of lies, 6 months of treating me like an idiot. "It's not like that." Simone began. "Shut up!" Marcus exploded, his voice reverberating off the walls. "You have no right to speak. You, whom I welcomed into my home, into my family. You, who cried on my shoulder when your marriage ended, and all the while you were—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The anger was so intense that he could physically feel it, like fire running through his veins. His hands trembled, clenched into fists so tight that his fingernails dug into his palms. Nicole got up from the bed, wrapped in the sheet, trying to get closer. "Marcus, please, we need to talk. Let me explain how this happened." "How this happened?" Marcus laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "It didn't happen, Nicole. You chose it. Every day for 6 months, you chose to betray me, to lie to me, to make a fool of me." What happened in the next few minutes would be debated exhaustively during the trial. Marcus turned abruptly and left the room, stomping down the stairs. Nicole followed him, still wrapped in the sheet, begging. "Marcus, wait! Please don't leave like this. We need to talk." But Marcus wasn't leaving. He was going to the basement, to his workshop, to where he kept something that would turn marital betrayal into criminal tragedy. The basement of the Williams house was Marcus's sanctuary. After leaving the police force, he had transformed that space into a complete workshop. But there was something else in that basement, something Marcus had never mentioned to Nicole. At the back of the workshop, hidden behind a tool rack, there was a small safe built into the wall. Even after retiring, Marcus had kept his service weapon, a Glock 22, the standard pistol of many police departments. Technically, he should have returned the weapon, but a favor from his former commander allowed him to keep it, legally registered as personal property. For protection, he had justified at the time. Now, his hands still trembling with rage, Marcus typed in the safe's code. 6 digits representing the date of his marriage to Nicole. The irony did not go unnoticed. Upstairs, Nicole had quickly thrown on a nightgown and was coming down the stairs calling out to him, Marcus, please come back here. We need to talk like adults." Simone had also gotten dressed and was in the bedroom, frantically searching for her cell phone. Her hands were shaking so much that she dropped the phone twice. She knew she had to get out of that house immediately. She had seen that look on Marcus's face, a cold, calculating, dangerous look. "Nicole," she called urgently, "we have to leave, now." "I can't just leave," Nicole replied, her voice breaking. "He's my husband. This is my home. We need to work this out." "You didn't see the way he looked at us," Simone insisted, following her sister down the stairs. "Nicole, please, we need to leave." In the basement, Marcus held the gun. The weight was familiar, comforting in a disturbing way. 15 years of training, thousands of hours at the shooting range. He checked the magazine. Full. Marcus climbed the stairs from the basement slowly, the gun in his right hand along his leg. He entered the kitchen where Nicole was waiting for him, still trying to find words to explain the inexplicable. "Marcus, please put that away," Nicole said when she saw the gun, her voice rising an octave in panic. "You don't need that. We're civilized people. We can talk." "Talk?" Marcus interrupted, his voice frighteningly calm. "What exactly do you want to talk about, Nicole? How you destroyed our marriage, how you cheated on me with your own sister." "We never laughed at you." Nicole began to cry. "I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. I didn't plan it. Simone and we just connected in a way I didn't expect." "You connected," Marcus repeated, as if tasting the words. "In my bed. In my house. While I was in physical therapy because I wrecked my back protecting people like you." Simone appeared in the kitchen doorway, stopping abruptly when she saw the gun. "Marcus," she said carefully, as if speaking to a wild animal. "This isn't going to solve anything. Please, let us go. You never have to see us again." "I gave everything for you," Marcus continued, looking at Nicole. 15 years of marriage. I worked overtime so you could follow your dream of teaching. I supported you when your mother was sick. I built an entire life around you, and you threw it all away for what?" "It's not an affair," Nicole shouted back, her sadness momentarily turning to defensive anger. "I love her, Marcus. I know you can't understand, but it's true. And I loved you too. I still care about you. But this, what I feel for Simone, is different." The word love was like a trigger. Marcus raised his gun, pointing it at Nicole. His years of police training made the movement fluid, automatic. "Don't say that word. You don't know what love is. Love is loyalty. Love is respect. Love is not destroying the person who trusts you." "Marcus, put the gun down," Simone pleaded, stepping forward. "Please, this isn't you. You're a police officer. You protect people." "I was a police officer," Marcus corrected, the gun still pointed at Nicole. "Now I'm nothing. No badge, no purpose, and now no family. You took the last thing I had left." The landline phone in the kitchen started ringing. They later found out it was Nicole's school, asking about her absence. The sudden shrill sound made Nicole take a step back, tripping over one of the kitchen chairs. Marcus interpreted the movement as an attempt to escape. His police training, years of conditioned reactions in high-stress situations, took over. The first shot echoed through the house like thunder. Nicole fell to the floor, her hands instinctively going to her chest where the bullet had pierced her. Blood began to trickle between her fingers as she looked at Marcus with an expression of absolute shock and disbelief. "No," she whispered. "Marcus, no!" Simone screamed, a primal sound of terror and despair. She rushed to her sister, falling to her knees beside Nicole, her hands trying to staunch the bleeding. "Nicole, Nicole, stay with me. Someone help." Marcus stood still, the gun still in his hand, staring at the scene as if he were watching from outside his own body. Part of him, the part that had been a police officer who had sworn an oath to protect lives, screamed in horror at what he had just done. But another part, the part dominated by pain and anger, saw only the realization of a twisted justice. "Call an ambulance, Marcus." Simone looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "For God's sake, she's going to die. Call an ambulance now." But Marcus didn't move. He just looked at the two sisters, one dying, the other desperate. "You destroyed everything," he said, his voice flat and distant. everything. And then he raised the gun again. Time seemed to dilate in that moment. Simone, kneeling beside her dying sister, looked up and saw Marcus pointing the gun directly at her. "Marcus, no!" she begged, her hand still pressing against Nicole's wound, now soaked with blood. "Please, think about what you're doing. This won't bring anything back. It will only destroy your life too." "My life is already destroyed," Marcus replied, his voice frighteningly calm. "You made sure of that." Nicole coughed, trying to speak. "Run, Simone," she managed to whisper. "Run." But Simone didn't run. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was love for her sister. Maybe it was simply the paralysis of absolute terror. "I'm sorry," Simone said, tears mixing with the blood on her hands. "Marcus, I'm sorry for everything. I never wanted it to happen like this. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, let me call an ambulance. Nicole needs help. She can still survive if we act now." For a moment, a brief, fragile moment, something seemed to flicker in Marcus's eyes. Then Nicole groaned in pain, a low, agonizing sound. And with that sound, something in Marcus solidified. He saw not the woman he had loved for 13 years, but the embodiment of his betrayal. "You had your chance," he said. "You had months to tell me the truth, to have some decency, some respect. But you chose to lie. You chose to make a fool of me in my own home." "We were wrong," Simone cried, her voice breaking in despair. "We were terribly wrong, I know. But that doesn't justify murder, Marcus. You're better than that. You've spent your whole life upholding the law, protecting people." Simone's phone began to ring in her pocket, the shrill sound echoing through the blood-stained kitchen. It was her mother, Dorothy, insistent. "Answer it!" Marcus ordered suddenly. "Answer the phone. I want you to talk to your mother. I want you to tell her what you did." With trembling hands, Simone took the phone out of her pocket, smearing blood on the screen. She stared at the flashing name. "Mama." "Hi, Mama," she said, her voice shaking uncontrollably. "Simone, honey, are you okay? You sound strange." Dorothy's worried voice echoed through the phone. "Mama, I need to tell you something." Simone began to sob. "What happened? Where's Nicole? Simone, you're scaring me." "Nicole's here, Mama, she's—" Simone looked at her sister, who was now pale, her breathing shallow and irregular. "She's hurt very badly." "Hurt? How, Simone? What's going on?" Marcus snatched the phone from Simone's hand. "Dorothy," he said, his voice cold and controlled. "Your daughters destroyed my family, and now they're going to pay for it." "Marcus! Marcus, what are you saying? What happened to Nicole? Marcus, please!" He hung up the phone and threw it on the floor, crushing it with his foot. "Please." Simone tried one last time, her voice just a whisper. "If you're going to kill me, at least call an ambulance for Nicole first. She doesn't have to die like this, in pain. Please, Marcus, if you ever loved me as family, do this for her." Marcus looked at Nicole. She was unconscious now, her breathing shallow. Blood had formed a pool around her. For a second, just a second, Marcus Williams became human again. He saw the woman he had loved, the woman he had dreamed of growing old with. He saw Sunday mornings drinking coffee on the deck he had built, the laughter, the plans, the shared dreams. But then he remembered the bedroom, the scene he had witnessed, the betrayal that burned like acid in his soul. "No," he said simply. The second shot was different from the first. The first had been almost reflexive, a trained reaction to a sudden movement. But the second was deliberate. Marcus carefully aimed and pulled the trigger with the same precision he had learned in thousands of hours of police training. Simone didn't even have time to scream. The bullet hit her in the chest. She fell backward, her eyes wide, with shock, and collapsed next to her sister. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus stood still, the gun still in his hand, staring at the two women lying on the floor of his kitchen. Outside, life went on as normal on the quiet Oakwood Drive. Children played a few houses away. A mailman passed by delivering letters. No one had heard the shots. Marcus slowly lowered the gun. He looked at his hands. The same hands that had held Nicole when she cried over her father's death. The same hands that had built furniture for their home. The same hands that had sworn to protect and serve. Now they were the hands of a murderer. Nicole let out one last weak sigh, her body finally succumbing to her injuries. Marcus heard that sound, the sound of life leaving the body of the woman he had loved, and felt nothing. He walked over to the kitchen table and sat down quietly in one of the chairs. He placed the gun on the table next to the morning newspaper. The normality of that detail was surreal. Marcus picked up his cell phone and, with surprisingly steady fingers, dialed a number he knew by heart. The number for the Greenville Police Department, where he had worked for 15 years. "Greenville Police, how can I help you?" answered a female voice he recognized. "Patricia, the dispatcher." "Patricia," Marcus said calmly. "It's Marcus Williams. I need to report a homicide. 2 homicides, actually." There was a confused pause. "Marcus, are you joking?" "I'm not joking, Patricia. I'm at my house, 247 Oakwood Drive. I just killed my wife, Nicole, and my sister-in-law, Simone. I need you to send a team." The line was silent for a moment, only the sound of shocked breathing. "Marcus, are you serious? Is this real?" "It's real," he confirmed, his voice devoid of emotion. "I'm unarmed now. The gun is on the table. I'll wait here for the team to arrive. I won't resist." And then, for the first time since he had pulled the trigger for the first time, Marcus Williams began to cry. Marcus's call to the Greenville Police Department caused instant panic. Patricia immediately transferred the call to Commander Raymond Brooks, who had been Marcus's direct superior for more than 10 years. "Marcus, it's me, Raymond," the commander said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I need you to explain to me exactly what happened." "I came home early today," Marcus said, his voice strangely composed. "I found my wife Nicole with her sister Simone in my bed. They had been having an affair for 6 months. I lost control. I took my service weapon and shot them both. They're both dead." 6 minutes after Marcus's call, 3 police cars arrived at Oakwood Drive, sirens cutting through the morning silence. Neighbors came out of their houses, confused and alarmed. The protocol for situations involving former police officers was different. The response team was highly trained and extremely cautious. "Marcus Williams, come out of the house with your hands, visible above your head." The commander used a megaphone. Slowly, the front door opened. Marcus emerged, his hands raised, his eyes empty. He was wearing the same clothes he had worn when he left for physical therapy that morning, but now they were stained with blood. He moved with mechanical precision, following each command without hesitation. "On your knees, hands behind your head." Marcus obeyed each instruction. 2 police officers approached cautiously, handcuffing him. One of them was Jamal Robinson, who had trained under Marcus's supervision. "I'm sorry, Marcus," Jamal murmured. "Don't apologize," Marcus replied, his voice distant. "You're just doing your job. I would do the same." As they led Marcus to the police car, the forensic team entered the house. What they found confirmed every word of Marcus's confession. Nicole Williams was on the kitchen floor, a single gunshot wound to her chest. Simone Davis was next to her, also with a gunshot wound to the chest. The scene was meticulously preserved. Marcus, with his police training, had not touched anything after the shots were fired. The gun was exactly where he said it would be, on the kitchen table. Devon Mitchell, Marcus's former partner, had insisted on being one of the officers escorting him. He sat next to Marcus in the back seat, fighting back tears. "Why, Marcus?" Devon finally asked. Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you talk to me before you did this?" Marcus turned to look at him, and Devon recoiled slightly when he saw his eyes. They were completely empty. "And what would you have done, Devon? Would you have changed the fact that my wife betrayed me? That my life was a lie? I would have helped you process it differently. I would have stopped you from throwing your life away. They betrayed you, yes, but now you're a murderer." "I know," Marcus agreed calmly. "And I'll pay for it, but at least now they've paid too." On Oakwood Drive, Dorothy Davis arrived half an hour later, having driven at breakneck speed after Simone's strange phone call. A police officer had to physically restrain her from entering the house when she saw the police tape. "My daughters! My girls! Let me see my girls!" she screamed, trying to push past. It was Commander Brooks who had to break the official news. He held the distraught woman's hands and said the words no parent should ever have to hear. "I'm sorry. Nicole and Simone are dead. They were killed by Marcus Williams." Dorothy's howl of grief echoed down the entire street. Marcus Williams's trial began 6 months later, in September 2023. The case had attracted intense attention. The media covered every detail, debating issues of honor, betrayal, domestic violence, and homophobia. Marcus pleaded guilty to both murders from the outset. His lawyer tried to argue mitigating circumstances, extreme emotional stress, severe provocation, temporary psychological breakdown. But the prosecution, led by the relentless prosecutor, Valerie Henderson, accepted none of this. This was not a crime of momentary passion, she argued in the crowded courtroom. Marcus Williams went down to the basement, opened a safe, took his gun, came back, and executed 2 unarmed women. He had multiple opportunities to stop, to reconsider, to simply leave the house. He chose violence. The hearings were devastating. Dorothy Davis testified, barely able to speak through her tears. "He destroyed my family. He took my 2 daughters. They made mistakes, yes, but they didn't deserve to die. No one deserves to die over a relationship." Devon Mitchell also testified, torn between loyalty to his former partner and horror at the crime. Marcus was a good cop, a good man, but on that day he let anger destroy everything he was. And now 2 women are dead, and he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. The defense presented psychologists who diagnosed Marcus with severe, untreated depression, aggravated by a loss of identity after leaving the police force. They argued that he had suffered an acute dissociative episode. But Marcus, when he was finally allowed to speak, destroyed his own defense. "I knew exactly what I was doing," he told the court, his voice firm and clear. "I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dissociated. I was betrayed, humiliated, destroyed, and I wanted them to pay for it. It was a conscious choice." The silence that followed was absolute. His own lawyer closed his eyes in defeat. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours, guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, no mitigating circumstances. The sentence was read on October 3, 2023, life imprisonment with the possibility of parole only after 25 years. Marcus received the sentence without visible emotion. He was 42 years old. If he served the minimum sentence, he would be 67 when he could be released. Dorothy Davis collapsed into the arms of family members when the sentence was announced. For her, no amount of years would bring her daughters back. The house at 247 Oakwood Drive was sold for a fraction of its market value. No one wanted to live in the house of horrors, as the media labeled it. It was eventually bought by investors who demolished it completely and built a small community garden on the site. Marcus was transferred to a maximum security prison. Reports indicate that he has become a model prisoner, calm, cooperative, keeping to himself. He refuses all media interviews and has cut off contact with all former friends and colleagues. Devon Mitchell visited him once, 2 years after the trial. It was like talking to a ghost. he described afterward. The Marcus I knew no longer exists. There's only this empty shell that breathes and eats and sleeps, but doesn't really live. Dorothy Davis never fully recovered. She set up a foundation in her daughter's names that supports victims of domestic violence and provides resources for the LGBTQ+ community. "I can't bring Nicole and Simone back," she said in a rare interview in 2024, "but I can try to ensure that other families don't suffer as mine has, that other LGBTQ+ couples are not afraid to live their truths." The case of Marcus Williams remains one of the most shocking in recent memory, not because of the brutality of the crime, but because of what it represents. How ordinary people, even those trained to protect, can cross unimaginable lines when confronted with betrayal and loss of identity. Marcus Williams, the former police officer who swore to protect lives, went from protector to destroyer. 3 lives ended that day in March, 2 physically, 1 in every sense that matters, and an entire community learned that the line between civilization and barbarism is much thinner than anyone would like to believe.